Hey guys, it is August 21st. We are like turning, if you can picture a racetrack, this is probably, we're coming out of turn 3 on the racetrack to be finishing up for the month of August. We are still in the long book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel, we know, is a major prophet, not because his message was any different, but because he had more to say. He had a longer book, and that's why he's considered a major prophet. But we're going to look into something interesting about God. We always should approach Scripture, and I know you've heard me and Lisa and Dawn say this numerous times before, is that we don't look at Scripture, and really it's the wrong way to look at Scripture is to look at it and try to find something about yourself in it. Go, okay, I'm going to look at this and find something about me. Scripture reveals who God is. It reveals the character of God. And we were made in the image of God initially until sin took over. So the whole process of our spiritual journey is the refining of ourselves, the transformation of ourselves from one that was destined for hell and full of sin, unredeemed, to one that is now no longer considered a sinner, but a saint who sins, because we are no longer condemned to death. And becoming more and more transformed, the potter and the clay, if you will, becoming more and more into in the image of, reflecting the image of God. So we need Scripture to show us who God is, and what God does for his people, the character of God. The character of God here that we're seeing is something that is repeated 3 different times just in this short passage of Ezekiel 20, 1 through 26. It reveals to us that God is very, he's repetitive, meaning it displays the character of grace, in my humble opinion. Because I repeat things to my people, the people that I love. I have adult children now, but I still repeat things. But especially when I had little children, I repeated things because I was extending grace, wanting them to know this. Hopefully you're going to choose the right way, because I am giving you grace yet one more time to do the right thing. So I clearly see the grace and the mercy of God here. In this verse, I chose 20:11, but it's mentioned in 13 and 21 about the decrees and the regulations giving life to his people. You know, often these days, and obviously in these days as well, the decrees and regulations, the law of the Lord was considered obtrusive and oppressive and just plain out bossy. I don't want to be told what to do. And unfortunately, that is how many people today, even those that are Christians, those that aren't Christians, but even those that are Christians, feel like, you know what? That's just asking too much of me to give up that. That's just going way too far over in my lane. You know, I can take going to church. I can go and do worship. I can even tithe. I don't even mind tithing. I mean, I'm okay with tithing. But I'm not giving up this, or I'm not doing that, or he has gone too far asking me to fill in the blank, whatever comes to your mind. But he clearly says, if you want to find life, I gave you everything that you needed for life. And I defined life as it appears in this scripture for the Old Testament. But then I also and defined life as it appears in New Testament in the John 10:10 scripture and the Matthew 10:39 scripture. Because it's interesting that in multiple times in the Old Testament, he talks about obeying, and the regulations and that. He also, Jesus and the disciples all talked about obeying God as a sign and of evidence of our love for Him. But it's interesting here in Ezekiel 20:13, he says, obedience, this is going to give them life. Just obeying these words, we're going to give them life. But then in our reflection of this, and you guys know I love to parallel scripture. I love to find scriptures that match up from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And I felt like this did a really good job. Maybe not completely, but parallel, straight lines. But it did suggest the same idea, because I love the idea of, or the promise in Matthew 10:39. And we don't often think about this. We very often think about obeying God. But Jesus says in Matthew, and I believe it's in Mark also, it may be in all of them but John, or maybe all of them but Luke. Anyways, it doesn't matter. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. You will find the life that you are looking for, the life that you desire, when you give up the life that you think you want. It's a promise from God. He promises life in John 10:10, a life that's abundant. But He also gives us the process of finding that. He told them the promise of life, but He also told them the process. And obedience actually just lines up really beautifully with this scripture in Matthew 10:39. But we often don't want to lose anything. We want everything He wants to give us and everything that we want also in our own way. That's what we want. But I've learned in my years of faith, I was saved at a very early age, but truly, and I always loved God, I always loved church, but truly never started, just could not. I got to the point in my mid-30s where I could not get enough of God. I could not put the Bible down. And that started in my early 30s. So most of my life, I just felt like I played church. But it wasn't until I began to go, you know what? I'm just going to lay this down. This is what I want, but I don't want what I want. I want what you want. And the only way to get to that point is just to say, you know what, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. I can't. Scripture says those that trust themselves are a fool. And I was like, I can't be foolish any longer. I trust you. And this is what I think would work out great. And you've heard my arguments on this, Father, but I trust you. So fall in line with the promise of finding life. Accept that, but then also accept the process and know that the process of obtaining the life that you want is laying the life down that you think you deserve. And we don't often want to do that. We have to lose it in order to find it. That's the process. Take care. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.